I was with the mayor that night, Your Honor. That's why I was speeding. I swear on my life. The courtroom went dead silent. Every head turned toward the young woman standing at the defendant's podium. She couldn't have been older than 24, dressed in a simple black blazer and jeans, her hands trembling as she clutched the microphone. Traffic Court 13 in Providence, Rhode Island, was usually filled with the usual excuses: sick kids, broken speedometers. I didn't see the sign. But this? This was new Judge Frank Caprio, the white-haired, kind-eyed judge famous for his compassion as much as his fairness, lowered his glasses and looked at her for a long, quiet moment. You were with the mayor, he repeated slowly, not as a question, but as if he were tasting the words to see if they were real double quotes. Yes, Your Honor, she said, voice cracking. Mayor Elorza. It was an emergency. He needed me right away. I have proof on my phone. A ripple of whispers shot through the gallery. Phones came out. Someone in the back row started live streaming. Judge Caprio raised a hand for silence, but his eyes never left the woman. Miss Reynolds, he said, reading her name from the ticket. You're telling this court that on the night of October 17th at 11:42 p.m., you were speeding at 58 in a 25-mile-per-hour zone because you were with Mayor Jorge Elorza? She nodded hard. Yes, sir. I can show you the messages, the calls, everything. The bailiff glanced at the judge. The prosecutor, a young assistant city solicitor, looked like he'd just swallowed his pen. Judge Caprio leaned back in his chair. He had seen every excuse in 37 years on the bench, but this one felt different. There was fear in her eyes, real fear, not the usual panic of someone about to lose $200. Something was wrong, Miss Reynolds, he said gently. I'm going to ask you to hand your phone to the bailiff. Unlocked. We're going to look at these messages together. Right now, in open court. Do you understand what that means? She froze. For the first time, her confidence cracked. Your Honor, some of it is private. This court is about truth, he said, voice still soft but firm as steel. If you're telling the truth, you have nothing to hide. If you're not, then we all need to know that too. The gallery held its breath. Her fingers shook as she typed in her passcode and handed the phone over. The bailiff carried it up the steps and placed it on the bench in front of the judge. Judge Caprio slid on reading glasses, opened the Messages app, and began scrolling. 30 long seconds passed. Then a minute. The only sound was the faint clicking as he tapped through conversation threads. Finally, he looked up. His face had changed. The kindness was still there, but it was wrapped around something heavier now. Disappointment, maybe anger. Miss Reynolds, he said quietly, would you like to change your statement? She opened her mouth. Nothing came out, because according to this phone, he continued, the last text message you received from anyone even remotely connected to City Hall was from a staffer 3 months ago, asking you to pick up coffee before a press conference you were catering. There are no calls from the mayor, no texts, no photos. In fact, he turned the phone so the courtroom camera could see the screen. The only person you were texting at 11:38 p.m. that night was someone named Javi, and the last message from him says, and I quote, hurry up, the Uber's waiting and the club lets out at 2. Gasps, someone in the back laughed. Then immediately stopped. The woman's face went white. That's not. She STAMMERED. Judge Caprio wasn't finished. And while we're here, he said, scrolling further, there's a selfie you sent Javi at 11:41 p.m. 1 minute before the officer pulled you over, showing you holding a drink that is very clearly not water, in a car that matches the description of the one you were driving. Would you like me to keep going? She started crying. Not dramatic sobs, quiet, broken ones. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I panicked. My license is already suspended from a previous ticket. If I get points again, I lose my job. I deliver for a pharmacy. People depend on me for their medicine. I thought if I said something big enough. Judge Caprio let the silence sit for a long time, then he leaned forward, voice low but carrying to the back of the room. Young lady, I have spent my life trying to treat people with dignity in this courtroom. I have dismissed tickets for single mothers, for veterans, for kids who made one dumb mistake. But what you just did, invoking the name of a good man who wasn't even in the state that night, trying to hide behind his reputation to escape responsibility, that is a different kind of wrong. He looked out at the gallery. This is why we check. This is why we don't just take people at their word when the stakes are high. Because lies like this hurt everyone. They hurt the mayor. They hurt every person who comes in here telling the truth and gets doubted because someone else cried Volf. He turned back to her. I'm fining you the full amount, $350 plus court costs. Your license will be suspended for 6 months, as the law requires. But I'm also ordering you to perform 40 hours of community service at the very pharmacy you say you deliver for. You're going to see, every single day, the faces of the people who depend on responsible drivers. And maybe, just maybe, you'll think twice before you drag an innocent person's name through the mud to save yourself. He paused, and for a moment the famous kindness returned. And Miss Reynolds? The next time you're in trouble, tell the truth. It's always lighter to carry. She nodded through tears as the bailiff led her away. The live stream chat exploded. Within an hour, the clip had 10 million views, but that was only the beginning. 3 days later, Mayor Jorge Elorza himself released a statement. He thanked Judge Caprio for his integrity, announced he was personally paying the woman's fine so she wouldn't lose her job entirely, and invited her to meet with him, not to shame her, but to offer her a second chance through the city's youth employment program. She took the offer. 6 months later, she stood in the same courtroom, this time not as a defendant, but as a witness testifying on behalf of a teenager who had made a similar mistake. She told the judge, voice steady and clear, I learned that the truth doesn't just keep you out of trouble. Sometimes when you're brave enough to tell it, it brings you all the way back. Judge Caprio smiled, the same smile that had gone viral 100 times before. Case dismissed, he said. And Miss Reynolds, keep coming back. But next time just to visit? The gallery applauded. For real this time, and somewhere. 1 million people watching on YouTube wiped their eyes and remembered that justice doesn't always wear a robe. Sometimes it just asks for your phone, years later. Most people only remembered the clip, the trembling voice. The phone screen held up to the camera, the collective gasp. They called it the mayor lie. It became shorthand on TikTok whenever someone got caught in an obvious fib, but the part no one ever saw, the part that actually mattered, kept unfolding long after the cameras stopped rolling. Her name was Isabella Reynolds. Everyone just called her Izzy. After the mayor paid her fine and got her into the city's Pathways program, she disappeared from the internet's memory almost completely. No apology tour? No tearful interview on the morning shows. She simply showed up to work every day at the Office of Economic Opportunity on Washington Street, filing paperwork, answering phones, learning how city government actually worked. Most days she sat across from Luis, a quiet Cape Verdean man in his 50s who had spent 20 years driving a ripped bus before a heart attack forced him into early retirement. Luis had been assigned as her mentor. He didn't lecture. He just watched her closely, the way older people do when they're trying to decide whether a young person is worth the oxygen they're wasting. One afternoon in February, 6 months into her probation, the office was nearly empty. Snow tapped against the windows. Luis finally spoke the words he'd been holding for half a year. You know why the mayor really paid that fine, right? Izzy looked up from stapling outreach flyers. Because Judge Caprio asked him to? Luis shook his head. No, because the mayor's little sister did almost the exact same thing when she was 19. Different city, different lie, same panic. Somebody gave her a second chance. He never forgot what that felt like. Izzy stared at the stapler like it had suddenly turned into a foreign object. I didn't know that, she whispered. You weren't supposed to, Lee said. That's how second chances are supposed to work, quietly, no applause. That night she went home to the same cramped apartment in Olneyville she'd had since community college. Her roommate had moved out months ago. The second bedroom now held boxes of unopened apology letters people had mailed her after the video went viral. She had never opened a single one. She sat on the floor, turned on one lamp and started reading. Some letters called her every name imaginable. Others were from mothers who had cried watching the clip, because their own daughters were one bad decision away. A few were from police officers who wrote that they had started showing the video in roll call to remind rookies that kindness and accountability are not opposites. One letter had no return address. Inside was a single photograph, a teenage girl in a graduation gown hugging a younger Judge Caprio. On the back, in shaky old man handwriting, "I was the one who lied in court once. He gave me the second chance I'm giving you. Don't waste it." She cried harder. Then she had the day she was exposed, the next morning. She walked into the mayor's outer office carrying a cashier's check for $412, the exact amount of the fine plus court costs. The receptionist tried to wave her away. "He's in a meeting." Izzy didn't move. "Tell him it's the girl who used his name. Tell him I'm ready to pay my own debt now." 20 minutes later, she was sitting across from Mayor Elorza himself. He looked tired. It was budget season. He took the check, looked at it, then slid it back across the desk. "I don't want your money, Izzy." "I need to give it," she said. "Not for you. For me." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. He took the check, tore it in half, and dropped the pieces into the trash. "Debt paid," he said. "Now go do something useful with the rest of your life." She did. 2 years later, Izzy graduated from Providence College Night School with a degree in public administration. She paid for it herself, one class at a time, working double shifts at the pharmacy that had kept her on despite everything. 4 years after that, she ran for city council in Ward 9, Olneyville, the same neighborhood where kids still grew up hearing sirens every night. Her opponents tried to use the old video against her. They mailed glossy flyers with a still frame of her crying in court and the words, "Remember this?" On election night, she stood on a folding chair in a VFW hall and told the crowd of 200 neighbors, "Yes, I remember. I remember every second. And if you want a councilwoman who's never made a mistake, you should vote for someone else. But if you want someone who knows exactly how far you can fall and still stand back up, someone who will never lie to your face because she knows what lies cost, then I'm asking for your vote." She won by 47 votes. On the night she was sworn in, Judge Caprio, long retired now, walking with a cane, sat in the back row of the council chamber, wearing a proud little smile that nobody except Izzy noticed. When the ceremony ended, she found him waiting by the exit. "You kept coming back," he said simply. "You taught me how," she answered. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the same torn photograph he had mailed her years earlier. "I want you to have the whole thing now," he said, turning it over. On the back, beneath his original note, he had added in fresher ink, "P.S. The girl in this picture grew up to be a pretty good judge herself. I think you will too." Izzy hugged him so hard his cane clattered to the marble floor. 10 years after the most humiliating moment of her life, Councilwoman Isabella Reynolds stood in the exact same courtroom, Traffic Court 13, now renovated but still smelling faintly of lemon polish and old wood. She was there to announce a new city program, Second Chance Traffic Court, a partnership between the judiciary and the mayor's office that would let first-time offenders trade fines for community service and mentorship instead of points on their license. Judge Caprio, 87 years old and frail but still sharp as ever, sat in the gallery one last time as the guest of honor when Izzy finished her speech. The new judge, a woman who had once been a teenage defendant in Caprio's court herself, asked if the retired judge would like to say a few words. He stood slowly, steadying himself on the bench in front of him. "I just have one thing to say," he began, voice thin but clear. "Many years ago, a young woman stood right there and told the biggest lie I ever heard in this room. And because we looked for the truth that day, because we didn't just punish her and walk away, she's standing here now trying to keep other kids from ever needing to lie in the first place." He looked straight at Izzy. Redemption isn't the exception, folks. It's the whole point. Then he smiled, the same smile the world fell in love with decades earlier. And sometimes, he added, it just starts with asking to see somebody's phone. The courtroom erupted. Cameras flashed. The new judge banged the gavel through tears, and somewhere in the back, a teenager who had just gotten his first speeding ticket watched the whole thing on his phone, heart pounding, wondering if maybe, just maybe, the truth might actually set him free. It usually does. Eventually.